This is Fallout, or it's what most people think of when you say the word Fallout. But it wasn't always like this. Much like the fictionalized American setting of the franchise, the Fallout games have been altered, mutated, changed almost beyond recognition, and there's no telling where they'll go from here. The very first Fallout game was created by Interplay in 1997, and couldn't match the sales records of Baldur's Gate or the first Diablo game, which both came out around the same time. Despite this, the game was critically acclaimed, and those who did purchase it were absolutely in love. How could you not adore a post-apocalypse set just after a time period of hope was zapped out of existence by nuclear war? Where Fallout 1 really shines is the social and political themes throughout this alternate retro-futuristic version of history. From the moment players get kicked out of the vault, they're expected to make their own way in the world with very little in the way of guidance, literally and morally. There's no true good or bad in the first game. Humanity is just surviving. It's a dark, pessimistic way to portray what life might be like after nuclear apocalypse, and it's brilliantly contrasted with the bright, future-forward thinking of the 1950s pre-war propaganda. But Fallout wasn't all doom and gloom. It balanced itself well with a strong leaning towards camp. Take, for example, the way a player's character interacts with NPCs if they have a low intelligence score.
What?
And just look at the super mutants. Still, while there were moments of levity, Fallout 1 took itself and its material quite seriously. Producer Tim Kaine, writer Marco Green, and the rest of the team at Interplay certainly had a grasp on what they wanted from their post-apocalypse, but their mastery of theme wouldn't continue through to the game's 1998 sequel, Fallout 2. Most of the team who created the first Fallout would go on to form a subsidiary of Interplay called Black Isle Studios, and they were tasked with developing Fallout 2 before the first game had even been released. So the devs were juggling two projects, and to make matters worse, Tim Kaine and several other creative leads left to create their own game studio, leaving the Black Isle team sparse, without direction, and rushing towards a tight deadline. Fallout 2's splintered development meant that there was a distinct change in tone. It became more comedic and less tragic, added tons of in-your-face pop culture references, and included very few new features. Despite this, the game actually sold better than its predecessor and was even up for a few Game of the Year awards, proving, somewhat depressingly, that while a tone change completely flipped the intent of the series, it made the game far more marketable. And as successes often do, Fallout 2 spawned yet another installment in the franchise. But once again, there would be a few bumps in the road of development. Originally, Black Isle Studios was meant to create Fallout 3 for Interplay Entertainment. We'll never know whether their game would have been a worthy addition to the franchise, because after years of development, Interplay went bankrupt and the entire Black Isle development team lost their jobs. Interplay was then forced to sell Fallout to the highest bidder, and that bidder ended up being Bethesda Softworks. The first thing Bethesda did after acquiring Fallout was ask Interplay to make them an MMO. Since very few original Fallout creators still had jobs, that project quickly failed, and the company who created the Fallout IP would ultimately lose all creative license to it after a very ugly and very public legal battle with Bethesda. Luckily, Interplay could still make money off the Fallout games that had come out before, including Bethesda's 2008 game Fallout 3. Yes, while Interplay was busy trying and failing to create an MMO, Bethesda was making their own version of Fallout 3, and unlike the MMO, Bethesda's first Fallout game was destined for greatness. When news first broke about Bethesda's purchasing of the Fallout IP, there was some discussion among fans that the Elder Scrolls developers would turn their beloved morally skewed wasteland into Morrowind with guns, and it turned out that their fear was warranted, though it's more like Oblivion with guns. Just by looking at it, it's obvious that Fallout 3 has very little in common with its predecessors. For a lot of players, this move into the first-person action RPG subgenre was actually a welcomed one. The game sold better than any of its counterparts and was released to near universal acclaim. The combat was fast-paced, the level of interaction players could have with the world was at an all-time high, and the goofiness was dialed up to 11. But that last bit ended up being a little bit of a problem. The harsh realities of the wasteland that had been also important in the first game were pretty much non-existent in Fallout 3. A society was formed around an undetonated atomic bomb still actively poisoning the water and air with radiation.
Give your bodies to Atom, my friends.
This was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, but it's still a good demonstration of the way Bethesda treated the Fallout IP. If Fallout 1 was a tragedy, Fallout 3 was an action comedy. But that in itself is sort of a tragedy, isn't it? Making the franchise more marketable meant the slow degradation of what made fans love Fallout in the first place. Many people had a distinct dislike of how lightly the topic of nuclear war was taken in Bethesda's first Fallout game, especially considering the theme of the entire series is quite literally that war never changes. But a lot of those criticisms would end up being addressed in the next installment in the series, 2010's Fallout New Vegas. With Bethesda focused on creating the next Elder Scrolls game, they decided to let another studio take the reins for Fallout New Vegas. That studio was Obsidian Entertainment, and it was almost entirely composed of former Interplay and Black Isle devs, so it's no wonder why New Vegas is so damn good. Essentially, the game selected all the best bits of previous titles, as well as some controversial ones, and then brought the series' narrative back to its original heights. Sure, New Vegas is still funny.
Man, I can't wait to see the look on his...
Maybe even funnier than 3. But it has a better understanding of what should and shouldn't be joked about in a world that expects players to take nuclear apocalypse seriously. Not only that, but all of the quest lines are interconnected in a way that invites introspection on the player's choices, and the companions are some of the best in the series. Its main problem at the time of release was that it looked and felt quite dated. And while New Vegas is looked at now as one of the, if not the best game in the series, reviews and sales at the time paled in comparison to Fallout 3. So when it came time to develop Fallout 4, Bethesda decided to go at it alone again. And this is where things get complicated. 2015's Fallout 4 outsold the rest of the games in the franchise and was synonymous with gaming culture for quite a few years. It was outrageously popular to mainstream gaming audiences and marked a true turning point for the series. It was more visually appealing, the combat was more accessible, and power armor was cooler than ever. And for the first time in Fallout history,
war never changes.
Players controlled a fully voiced protagonist. That novelty was extremely exciting.
We were in a vault when it happened.
For a little while. Most of the choices had very little impact on the trajectory of the story, and so the player's participation in the world felt shallow, as did the world's politics, which should be a crime. Fallout's complex politics and moral ambiguity has always been the best thing about the series since its inception. But for the most part, Fallout 4 reduced these themes down to more simple, palatable stories about obvious good guys and obvious bad guys. This simplicity also infected the leveling system and the game's missions, which often ended up being super repetitive. Players could build and fortify their settlements' bases against attacking forces, but it ended up feeling like a lackluster tower defense minigame rather than a siege with any real physical danger or political consequences. It's all action, no story. That doesn't mean Fallout 4 wasn't fun. It wouldn't have made so much money if people didn't enjoy playing it. But it's just not the dark, complicated, unjust, and unfair world that the series was built on. In an attempt to appeal to a wide range of people to make as much money as possible, Fallout became a very different beast. And that simplified money-making approach would become a bigger problem when Bethesda decided to revive their failed Fallout MMO. 2018's Fallout 76 was so deeply terrible on launch that just saying its name feels like a call to war. When the game came out, it was criticized for being buggy to the point where it was often unplayable. Not that it mattered, because there was a stunning lack of content and also a massive backlog of cash-grabby microtransactions. But perhaps its worst offense, at least for longtime fans, was its complete lack of respect for the series. There was a heavy emphasis on all the cool mutant monsters and the packs of raiders and bandits looking to mess up your camp. Not to mention you can launch nukes just for the fun of it. Once again, it was all action. Since release, Fallout 76 has managed to get out from under the heaps of criticism though. It has fixed a lot of bugs and is generally a fun play experience, but that doesn't change the clumsy handling of its post-apocalyptic world and narrative. And the recently released and much maligned Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition has further hardened fans against the franchise. With bugs aplenty and a heavy focus on nickel and diming players, it's an all-out failure on every front. Bethesda has confirmed that they are planning on releasing a proper Fallout 5, and reception to that news has remained mixed amongst fans. With the series having changed so completely, and the most recent entry being so disappointing, it's hard to say what might come next. With fans as divided as the Brotherhood of Steel and the New California Republic over what they want out of the franchise, it may just be impossible to please them all. But hey, at least the TV show's pretty good. The only thing we know for sure is that while war never changes, the Fallout series certainly has. And all we can do is hope that the next changes it makes are for the better. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to Nerdstalgic Gaming for more content just like this, and let us know in the comments. Do you want the Fallout series to return to its roots? Or do you like the action-packed direction it's taken?